I'm Cameron Small, I'm lead developer on Marauders. We're here at the Royal Leeds Armoury. Jonathan Ferguson is here to school me on these wonderful weapons, this one being a prototype. We always want to lean into having the weird and wonderful guns in our game, and he is here to help us and guide us to do the right thing. So we have here is the EM1.
EM2.
Two.
They're pretty similar,
Yeah.
to be fair.
And as we discussed earlier, Thorpe is kind of a mysterious gunsmith.
Thorpe is EM1.
Okay, then he's EM1. Here we go. See, I told you he's here to tell me the right and wrongs things.
There's a whole gaggle of guys involved in this. This is a much wider British programme to come up with the new small arms for the post World War II era. Literally, they're anticipating Cold War and possibly hot war with the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. So we're stuck with bolt-action rifles. We've got outdated machine gun, the old Vickers gun from pre-World War I. Yeah. So they're trying to replace everything, and this is what they were going to do for a rifle.
I mean, it's outstanding. I mean, obviously, this bullpup design is striking immediately, but what attracted me to this being as a design is that we have the STG-44 in the game right now, and it's the heavy damage dealer of the game, right? It's chambered in Sim 6.2, which I'm sure everyone will be very raged to hear, but it's just the current way we designed the game. But we needed an assault rifle that was completely different but served essentially the same purpose, which as you said there, is basically why the gun exists. But obviously the bullpup is the thing that attracts me straight away, and we are a CQB game essentially, though, in terms of, so the bullpup design is kind of great for that.
It is, yeah. Weirdly, that was not the design intent of this. It was more about trying to keep the rifle lightweight.
Right.
And they thought by removing the buttstock from the rifle, chunk of wood, butt plate, and probably you've got a bit of metal there to join it onto the gun. That's not insignificant in terms of weight savings. Mm. So that was their motivation. Obviously, the major upside as well is it makes it great for CQB and in a Cold War context for jumping in and out of APCs, helicopters, spaceships, exactly. So it wasn't just one thing, but the one thing they did write down was actually about saving weight.
Right, and this is technically a prototype, could we say?
This one's a prototype. It was actually adopted as rifle number 9. There's an existing rifle, bolt-action rifle, was rifle number 4, and there are others in between, obviously, but in terms of main service rifles, the next one would have been rifle number 9. It was adopted in April 1951, and then none were ever made. So only the prototypes exist, and there's a whole political saga. You mentioned caliber. Well, 7.62 NATO is the end point, along with the various rifles adopted by the powers of the Cold War. America wanted to go its own way. Britain was still trying to flex those imperial muscles and have NATO, or what would become NATO, adopt their rifle, or our rifle, and their cartridge as well. So this was going to be 280, so smaller diameter bullet than 303, in a short cartridge. It's that Sturmgewehr concept. Low recoil, low cartridge weight, compact weapon. It's just that Britain decided we're going to do this newfangled, buttless,
do something different
design.
I mean, yeah, I can totally feel it. Like this is a prototype weapon. It's just straight away though, the optic. So like I'm trying to struggle to acquire some sort of sight picture through this, and I've noticed
It has faded over the years.
I mean,
it would have been clearer in 1951.
It can still function. I see it. It's dropping in from the top.
Yeah. There's a logic to that.
Okay, love to hear it.
Yeah. This ended up going nowhere, as you know, and the SA-80 was done 20 odd years later instead, revisiting a lot of the same issues. But anyway, and the SUSAT site on that, so ex-British service people watching this will know very well, comes up from the bottom. But the prototype for that site and the marksman sight for the old SLR, the L1A1, was actually coming down from the top. And it's the same logic. There's actually a Colt M16 scope that does the same. It's so that big needle pointer thing isn't obscuring your target.
Why isn't this widely adopted?
Bring it down onto target. Now, nowadays, we always come up onto target.
Okay.
So it's not really the way to do it.
It just looks great. it's such a nice sight picture, and it's so unique. If you're making a video game, you have the opportunity to have a wacky, sight. Like you gotta do it. So we're gonna have to make it exactly the way it is.
Well, thinking about attachments.
Oh.
Now, don't want to give you ideas, but so the original version of this had a bipod attachment on the front, like the EM1. So you could have a bipod out the front there.
Okay.
There's a sniper version, which is a 3.5 power scope instead of, because this has no magnification, as you've just seen. It's just to replace iron sights. So limited attachment options, but historically there's at least one that would have seen service, and they moved away from the bipod, but it's not to say you couldn't put it back on if you wanted to.
Interesting. You've given me some great ideas. Now, if I was to give this, weapon a name, a designation, because obviously we're an item looting based game, what would you like to see it be called? Is it number 9? I
think so, yeah, because essentially you're doing alternate history, aren't you? So if this exists in numbers, it has to have been because it was actually chosen over the FAL as rifle L1A1.
That's what did
potentially.
happen.
If it depends when it came in. If it came in prior to 1957, which logically it would have done, it would be rifle number 9. If they couldn't get their act in gear and it came in 762 NATO, post 1957, this is what would have been rifle L1A1.
Okay. Ooh, I got options. Great. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for that. That's great. This is a piece of work, to say the least. So here we have the Viper.
One of them. There is another version.
There is another one. Is this a Mark 1? Is there Mark's version of this?
Yes. Yeah, Mark 1. Although the other one's marked number 3, if I remember rightly, which gets pretty confusing.
Okay. The name Viper, I'm obviously drawn to. It's a badass name for it. Any reason why it's called that?
We don't actually know the reason for the name. There are a couple of other snake-based names for British firearms a bit later on. Well, sorry, not really relevant, but I think it's just a badass name. I don't think
I'm fine with that answer. I'm fine with that answer.
You'd have to try and, we'd have to, well, the opportunity's gone sadly to speak to the designer, Mr. Hutton Williams, who came up with this and the other radically different versions. The number 3, but actually I think is the second one made. I think there was an interim design that we haven't ever seen. But same concept, but done very differently. This is probably the cooler of the two. It's hard to say.
I mean,
the one you chose. So.
Yes, undoubtedly so. So in our game, obviously, aiming with this weapon is impossible in terms of aiming down the sights. So we decided to lean into that.
What sights?
Exactly. So we decided to lean into that as a mechanic for our game. So some weapons have to be hip fired only.
Right.
And this is the SMG class that falls into that functionality. We've got it chambered under a 9mm.
Yep, that's right.
My understanding is there's a hidden Sten in this case.
There is. Those of you who know the Sten would recognise this magazine well, and probably the bolt as well, but it's quite nerdy. If you look in the top, you can see the tubular section.
Hiding away there.
Yeah, with the cocking slot. But it is pretty well disguised in this shell, which was apparently designed for flotation. Well, for holding, obviously, but also so it would float if you had to let it go. It gives you a clue as to its intended use.
Right, commandos coming out of water.
That's what's stated in one of the reports. Not the only use for it. Any compact submachine gun is a good idea. I featured it in my book a couple of years ago because it's a rare example of a bullpup submachine gun where you've moved your firing grip so far forwards that the whole gun is set back.
So this is obviously under the armpit, which I'm going to try and attempt now.
Yeah. Just watch out for this. Very unusual single point, what we now call a single point sling.
Right.
Again, gives you a clue as to how it's supposed to be held. It's designed as a one-handed weapon.
So my left hand's free here, so...
You can obviously use your second hand, but the idea was to free up your other hand to be able to throw grenades, grab wounded team members, whatever.
Yeah, be able to freely reload.
Hence no sights. No sights and the armpit stock.
So in terms of like fire training for this thing, they're practicing on a range, firing it like this. It's just something you get a feel for, and they just know where it's going to land.
It is, yeah, to an extent. It's not ideal, and it's a real pivot from the British idea of a machine carbine where you're using it as a semi-automatic rifle, essentially, first and foremost, and only in an emergency, in theory, would you use it as an automatic weapon. This is the opposite to that. It's automatic by default, effectively, and it's not for aiming with. You're looking over the top of the gun and relying on... It's the same phenomenon as point shooting, which is where the idea that you'll tend to look where you're pointing. And that kind of works with this. And also you can observe where your bullets are striking, just like you do in a game. That was something people did in real life.
Tracers are almost using as a guide.
You wouldn't have tracers.
Okay.
Tracer 9mm is a thing, but they didn't use it. So all they're doing is observing the strike of the bullet. Tracer would have been super useful for this, actually.
Not a bad idea. Might have to put it in the game. Oh, awesome. It's an amazing piece of kit. And this material is this literally just wood I'm feeling here?
Walnut wood, as is traditional, brown best and before.
Yeah. We also have a problem, there's no trees in space, but we've made up this lore that they brought all the logs over to Jupiter and they're just turning them into these weapons essentially. So we're trying to get away with that. But the main thing that strikes me is just the sound of that firing is incredible, and that is literally just down to the fact that there's a stand inside there.
Yeah, but it does kind of sounds weird, but it does sound a bit wooden. Yeah, when you dry fire it like that.
It contributes to that. Yeah,
it's the cocking sound. You really get the hollow sound of the stock.
But
of course, this is another kind of reversal because the Sten Mark 1 had wooden furniture on it, bits of wooden furniture, and the Lanchester before it had a traditional wooden rifle stock. So this 1943, they're doing it for very different reasons, but they're going back to old materials and the idea of a wooden stock, almost like a musket. But that's different idea.
So just to check, this is a commando weapon. You can fire one hand under your armpit. You drop in water, it's okay. There's a Sten hidden inside, and it's essentially a bullpup SMG, all rolled into one.
Yeah, and the beauty of the Sten is, and people go on about it being unreliable, we can have that argument, but it's designed to run without any lubricant. So if you just let the water pour out, it should shoot. As long as you've got good magazines.
Wow. So the MAT 49, it's got a bit of a status, I'd say, in our game, being very effective for close quarter combat. We run it in a 32 ACP in our game.
Okay.
It's just a ammo class thing we do, just a way we quickly balance things. But I see you've got it folded here.
Yep.
Now we have it unfolded. The terminology I'm not so sure is correct. Now this looks amazing the way it does here. We don't really, do we have any theory on the folding mechanic and its purpose?
As I understand it, it was purely for use by paratroopers, who are one class of troop that would use, any submachine gun, but in particular the MAT 49 for the French. So you'd only ever use that if you were jumping out of an aeroplane.
Right, not a spaceship.
Yeah, or maybe for storage, but most vehicle racks for. I mean, it doesn't give you any. Like if you unfold it.
Okay, you wanna.
Or I can
unfolding. Yeah. How do I?
It's actually quite securely held.
Yeah, it looks
at
very
the top here, and the stock gets in the way. So, yeah. But with the magazine off, it does not give you any greater. Not really.
Yeah.
It's not really any more compact. So the only reason to fold it up is if you're a paratrooper, and there aren't many paratroopers in space.
Yeah. Interesting. So, my understanding, it is a French weapon. It is a pre-Vietnam weapon, and they try to adopt it for guerrilla tactics afterwards. The opposition, I should say, which is what made me a fan of it in the first place in terms of the kind of the guerrilla style that the people are using it for, because it fits really well with our kind of space pirate theme. Anything to get the job done.
Looks the part.
It looks the part, especially. We have this diesel punk theme. I mean, look at the barrel. I mean, that's exactly anything with this pattern. We're going to make it for the game. But we have it. The stock as an attachment. Now, I'm assuming it's coming at factory issue with this every time.
Definitely, yeah. But you can detach it.
It's detachable. So we're not too off the mark on that one.
No, I mean, there's not much. Well, no, I don't know. You can't really use it with the stock fully folded because you've got the grip safety that you need to depress.
That definitely feels,
So if you wanted it to be super compact, hiding under a coat or something, for whatever reason, then you would just slide it off.
And an extended magazine is too much to ask for this weapon? I assume this is
I'm
what
not
you're gonna
aware of anything longer than that. It would be awkward. It's basically a Sten mag redesigned to fit the Mat 49, and that's the size of it, really. So
that mechanism is
34,
amazing.
32 round Sten mag.
32, okay. No, it's a stunning gun, to say the least. In terms of its finish, which drawed me into the weapon in the first place, it's almost completely covered in the same type of finish, except for the magazine. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I believe it's a form of phosphating, which is pretty standard Second World War and later. You could think of this as a sort of French take on a grease gun, really.
Of course.
Compact, 9mm in its ordinary ball. And it takes a couple of lessons. The grip safety is, not essential, but some sort of safety is essential with these guns that work from an open bolt, which I'm sure you've got modelled correctly already, where the bolt flies forward from the rear position. That's quite dangerous. So if you accidentally bang it on something or snag, even if the bolt's in the forward position, you snag it on a bit. I've heard this from veterans. Snag it on some cam netting or something.
Oh, okay.
And pull the bolt far enough back to go forward, pick up a round, and chamber it and fire it, because that's how it works. So you need some sort of safety thing. So we had to modify the Sten gun in World War II to be less dangerous to the user.
Okay. Well,
they had the luxury of being able to design it from scratch in 1948.
Okay. We don't have any camo knitting in space, so I think we're okay for the space part.
No, but there might be something.
Yes, of course.
Well, you can see they've made this about as low profile as you could without turning it into a scorpion button, which would be awkward. The grease gun did it even better with the A1, with a finger hole in the bolt. You pull it back. But you don't want a grease gun, you want this thing that looks cool.
This was the first weapon we made for the game. I personally took on the job because I instantly fell in love with it. So, pleasure. Thank you so much for letting me handle this magnificent beast.
If you press that button there, you can pull the stock out.
Oh, let's try it.
Or off.
I was curious, because the weight of that... Oh, okay, there's no weight in that at all.
Yeah, it all adds up. But you lose so much control by taking this off.
I'm glad that we did that in the game. So basically, there is recoil is, to say the least, unwieldy, and without this in the game. So I guess we did that right, at least. So,
this design has a great advantage of the magazine well being so long, because you wouldn't normally hold the magazine, wouldn't ever want to hold the magazine in use, because it changes the angle of presentation of the cartridges, and they can hit things and not go in properly. Right. So this being extended means you can grasp it. It's designed to be grasped. You can see the finger moves, so you can hold on to that. That would allow you to steady it in recoil better than a gun that didn't have that feature, at least. But yeah, you kind of want this, really, ideally. Great. But who knows? If this stuff is like surplus stuff that's been lying around for years, someone takes this off and leaves it somewhere, you've lost it.
Of course, yeah. Smells clean though. I'll give you that. Looking after your guns well. So this being traditionally the Scorpion, which we've nicknamed as a bit of an Easter egg to the great first-person shooter GoldenEye, the Klob. Now, we've tried to balance the game, so there's some artistic license that we've done. So in our game, you can only really do a burst firing functionality for the game, and this is a craftable weapon. But in terms of attachments, obviously, this is fastened steadily to the weapon.
It is, yeah.
And we've done the same in the game, but in terms of possible attachments, even extended mags, what sort of range do you see as a possibility for this kind of weapon?
Well, reality is not good news, I don't think, in this respect. But so first of all, the stock actually kind of is an attachment.
Okay.
And what you'll see in criminal use, because these are quite popular in certain parts of the world for criminal use, is they'll get a drift and a mallet and they'll bash off that stock because it turns it into a bit more of a compact weapon.
Right.
Well, not massively, but it just, I don't know, I think they like the look.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
but you can't. It's not meaningfully an attachment because you can't put it back on very easily.
Okay, yeah.
So there's that. Mm-hmm. There are different magazine sizes for this, but only really two. So 10 round, you don't really want to go down from 20 rounds because 850 rounds per minute is pretty speedy.
Done. Yeah.
So, and there's no drum for it, I don't think. So yeah, it's not. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, the rate of fire would certainly benefit from that. I've grabbed one for you with a suppressor on it, which is very cool. But I mean, try and unscrew it. It's effectively fastened to the gun.
That feels like it's going to be endless. Yeah, that's
Now,
not going anywhere.
There's no reason why you couldn't, and there might be, for all I know, a modification, or you could thread the outer bit of the barrel and have a conventional screw-on, screw-off suppressor. So that's feasible, if not really. I mean, suppressed Scorpions are not common anywhere. This was designed as a personal defence weapon for vehicle crews, artillerymen, people like that.
Perfect, because we're in spaceships, so that fits very well. And obviously our mechanics in our game don't allow you to fiddle with attachments in the game. You have to come out into your hangar and do it in there, so that works really well. What I'm going to try and attempt now is the little fold-on stocking that I've seen become a bit of a meme.
Go for it.
But I'm told this is literally just give that a quick knock.
I'm pretty sure it may not be in the Czech manual, but it is.
Oh, really?
It is done.
Official
In real
maneuver.
life, yes.
And it's just a little squeeze.
Yep,
and then
you got it.
Back. Now I've also seen like people holding it like this. Is that?
That's a thing too.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't boned up on the Czech service manual or infantry manual for this, but yeah, I've definitely seen it done in real life with the finger through the wire loop. Reason being, there isn't a lot of real estate on this gun to actually grab.
Yeah.
It's awkward. It's the only real major design flaw of this, I would say, and it's not even really a flaw. They're compromising weight, size, and all of that for not being able to hold it very effectively. So you've kind of just got to grab around here and avoid the reciprocating cocking ears here. So that's the reason for people putting the finger through there, just to have some way of holding it. The primary reason is because you haven't got the safety of the buttstock on the shoulder.
That's fascinating.
There is a strong risk on this of your fingers going in front of the muzzle.
It's just that's the back of my mind is, muzzle flash wise, I imagine it doesn't really matter the size, but the heat of that is going to, just a slight touch of that barrel, get a little quick suntan off that one.
Yeah, you don't want to be touching it. You definitely don't want to be touching it. But yeah, that's why you've seen people do it.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.